Yeah, and there we are again with another episode of Dance Gems. Today we're going to talk about singular or composed movements. And of course, what is all that singular or composed movements? Maybe you know it already, maybe you're not, but we are going to talk about it. And we would never do that, of course, with my good friend and colleague, Ton Greten. Let's see if he is there to join us for this intriguing topic, singular or composed movements. Hey, Ton,
Hey, Sean.
how
Yes,
are you? We
interesting topic. Yes,
yeah, we
very fine with me. And with you?
yeah, it's a very interesting topic, I think. But yeah, that's of course a personal opinion, as you will hear. But singular or composed, it's not something that I immediately could connect to dance when I heard you talking to that for the first time. When you made me think about it, think, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Used to maybe slightly different words, but I love it now. I love singular and composed or composed. So let's see what it is and see why you and I are so enthusiastic about it. Doesn't mean that you have to, but maybe you listeners, dancers, teachers are also enthusiastic about singular or composed movements. Tom, that sounds so complicated. Singular or composed. Well, what is it?
A singular, in our view, in the
Hmm.
gem method, we have 10 body parts. But of course, we have more body parts. But we put 10 body parts because 10 body parts, it's, I assume that it's simpler to get it in your body and in your brain to understand that we have 10. The 10 body parts where we can bend, stretch, and rotate. And the joints, it's actually the biggest one where you can bend, turn, and rotate. And of course, we have 10 fingers. They are also part of the body. And we have two shoulders, two arms, 10, or how we say, 2 feet, two legs, etc. But it's more. Of course, it's more. But at the end, we keep it at 10 and we made it more simple, but we'll not say it's easy. So I will call them. We have our head, we have our shoulders, our arms, our hands, our fingers, our chest, the hips, the legs, the feet, and the toes. And of course, there are more body parts, but 10, they are simpler to get in your head and to hold it in the long term memory. And how I could say it, in the anatomy, you could say the body is bilateral. And bilateral will say it's two-sided, two sides of the body, left and right. And unilateral means it's one side of the body. And when we move two body parts at the same time, in the same space, in the same form, then we are symmetric. And bilateral, we build up symmetrically, but not exactly mathematic, the same left and right. There is always a small difference in it. And from there, we use two arms as singular, symmetrically, if you use them in the same direction and in the same time.
So
And
that's a lot of
with
new things. So you start to
yeah,
talk about. Uh,
okay, so Sean, yes, you
Yeah,
take it
that's a
over
lot of.
from me.
We talk about singular and composed, but of course, all these terms they and words they are connected. So Ton also introduced two other terms, unilateral and bilateral, and also symmetrical and asymmetrical. And all of these things could be a separate podcast episode, but we need to know them a little bit to understand the other ones. That is for sure. That is for sure. So we have 10 body parts. Hopefully you can remember them now because we talk a lot about 10 body parts, Don. And 10 body parts can actually only make, each body part can actually only make maximum three movements. Either they rotate, bend, or extend. That's
Yeah,
it.
three
Or
actions.
flex. three actions. It's better is to say actions. Flex. Now, all these things are a little bit debatable. For instance, the people who studied anatomy, they might say, oh, but you can also meet side bending, for instance. That's also true, but it's a form of bending. So we kept it relatively simple. 10 is easy to remember, of course, and there we do that. So if I only move one arm, we call that a singular. But it's not that easy as that, because we didn't say how we move the arm. And that's where tone was. Now, of course, we have two arms, and they are almost the same. Mathematically, they're never exactly the same. If you put a mirror on your face and you see exactly the same sides, it looks a little bit weird. We think we have same, but one eye is a little bit bigger than the other eye, which is actually quite comforting. If you see someone, they do that sometimes. I forgot the artist on, where they make it exactly the same. It's scary. It's scary when you're exactly the same. Singular. Is it only singular and composed? Do we see that only before we talk in movement? Do we see that only in dance, Tom?
No, we see this everywhere, Sean,
Yeah.
in our whole society.
Hmm.
And actually, if we do a single movement and I put my arm up, I have to sneeze. Ah, not, it will not happen, guys. Sorry.
A singular sneeze. Yeah.
A singular sneeze, yes. So when I bring my arm up, actually, when I put my underarm up, then and my upper arm, then I have two action actually, bending and rotating from my shoulder. And if I move them, my arm, then it's already a composed action because you need two action for one singular movement of one body part. I
Yeah.
hope you can still follow me.
No, that's good. It's good. It's really something to think about. Is if you can break everything down to one, hence the word singular, that's singular. And it's, let's say it's more, rather say challenging than difficult, right? It's challenging actually just to do
Mhm.
one body part in one singular action, right? I rotate only my shoulder. Now, of course, my arms are connected to the shoulder, so that's just what it is. But that would be a singular movement, right? A singular action with a
Because that
singular body part.
joint will move, your
Yeah,
shoulder joint
yeah,
will rotate there. And the elbow joint, if you would do the arm, bend and stretch, and you would lift the arm also, it will rotate. So these are already two actions. And when you go back, it's four actions because you turn to the right, you turn to the left, uh, you bend and you stretch. Say, yes, it's four. Then you have actually four.
yeah,
Yeah, one, two, three, four. When I go back again.
yeah.
And this is quite interesting to see dance like that, Sean. Mostly, you said it already in the beginning of the podcast, we move composed with all body parts together. But it gets more variety in it if you can build it down. And even also, if you bring it to a singular, to one singular, then I would my arm, underarm, and upper arm would be stay straight, and then I would only rotate from my shoulder, and then I have a singular movement from the arm with one action, singular action, and also in a singular direction. Because think about it, if you would change the direction, then you can only change by bending, stretching, or rotating. Otherwise, it's not possible. How you want to do that would be magic. Star Trek, beam me, please, to the other place. That actually you can only move through space and time, space time, by bending, stretching, rotating. Otherwise, it's not possible.
Yeah, you always need an action to change direction of a single body part. Now, obviously, you can move
And
to
how we call that, Sean? You
space
remember
time.
how we call it?
Yeah,
Space time? No, they're changing. The change. point.
Oh, the change point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Change
didn't want
point.
to introduce another term, right?
Sorry,
That's
sorry,
why I
sorry.
was
Yes. Now you
that.
can explain that one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, so let's go back and then I'll promise I explain the change point too. Once we become aware of the singular movement and how they move, like bending, stretching, or rotating, one body part, one type of action, once become really aware of it, then it's for our awareness also, or our brain, our mind, it's a little bit easier first to comprehend, right? To understand. And every moment of, and whether that's a change in direction, whether it's a change in action, or later on, let me also throw in a new term, or dynamic, there is a certain point when that change happens. And we call that change point. So the point where you change. And so you become very aware of all these micro changes almost from one body part only. Now, obviously, if I have two arms, I don't have to rotate them in the same way. I can rotate them in a different way. I can make different actions. I can make even the change point at different moments. Only with two body parts and the action that Tom just demonstrated and told, that already becomes an almost an endless way of combining. And we as in this podcast, we would like to make you aware how you can move singular so that you also can start to build it up to a composed movement. And the strange thing here is, Don, what you and I discovered is that everyone always move composed, but it happens very unaware. So subconsciously or unconsciously, actually, we always move composed. And to move aware composed, you don't need to do anything, but it is good to follow first singular movement, make them all aware, bring them all to your awareness, and that will drastically change how you also move composed. Because you might say, yeah, but you always move composed. Not always, but yeah, in dancing, very often we move composed, but definitely not always. I'm only moving my finger, and that has quite a bit of impact. But since I'm talking, I also have to move my jaw. Yeah?
Yes, very interesting, Sean. If we move a singular
Hmm.
movement of, say, the arm, and you take one direction forward,
Hmm.
the change point on that pathway can only happen by bending, stretching, or rotating. And on that path from A to B, and that's where I'm going then, I start from A and end somewhere on B. I could change the point there, then it gets not a new C. No, it starts from new then, because your arrival point at that change point will be B, but B will be the new departure A. I
Yeah.
hope you can still follow me.
Well, that's a whole other topic, Don. That's,
Yeah,
but it's
totally
the
other.
part. That's okay. That's okay. I like it. I like it. So I have a question for you. Also, a change of direction or a change of space can only happen through those one of those three actions. There's no other
Yeah.
way. We can try it, and we would challenge you to try. And if you can do it, please call us, and we'll bring you into the podcast. But
E- e- Even when you fall, you have one of the three actions,
you have one of the. But there
or,
is
or
there
all three together.
but there is one way to create change point without using any actions. Let's see how well you met it. There's
Yeah?
one way to make change points without an action.
Without the action.
No, the action is the same, but keep the action the same. But the change point, there is no change in space, so you don't need to change the action. Yeah,
You don't change. No, when you're standing still, you still have balancing in small bending, stretching, rotating.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when you are
yeah.
dead,
We do. We always do that, Tona. Now, when you change the dynamic, when you change the dynamic, you don't have to change the action. So let's say
oh, yeah, correct.
theoretically. So yeah. So
Theoretically,
I learned that from you, by the way. I learned that
yeah,
from you.
correct. It's
Uh,
correct.
but
Yes,
yeah.
but still, there will be an increase or decrease.
Yes, always. There's no other way.
No, there is no other
No other
way.
way. It's the
And
same action, but there still will be an increase or decrease in muscle toning to achieve that. There's no other way.
yeah, actually, our body is our big instrument.
Yeah.
And we have then, when we have a team or formation, we
Mhm.
have then, say, 10 dancers, then actually we have 10 human beings with 10 human bodies, would say, if there are don't have injuries, could be. But then all these 10 bodies have 10 body parts. So you have
Mhm.
actually 100 possibilities to form something. Only use the hands in the singular movement from the
Yeah.
whole team. This is already a great effect. Only to move the head, that's a great effect.
Yeah.
So then it's also symmetric because all the other dancers have only the head or only the fingers. And can you see it also when only one dancer would do it? Only one dancer would do an action, a different action against the group, then still it's also singular because it's one against nine, or you have nine dancers who do the head and one dancer keep the head still. So then you have singular movement all in the head. One dancer doesn't do the singular movement and stand still, have a different action to do or a different quality, because of quality, it's again a new term, Sean. We did their podcast over dynamic quality and we mentioned all the qualities there. But still, can you imagine that even in the macro and micro, uh, you can go on a very small level when you zoom in, that it gets always, you come out on a singular. But the singular, it's then also again composed, and then you zoom in more, zoom in, it's endless, that you find mostly composed. And in the macro, it's the same. Our Earth is going around the sun, but our sun and Earth is going around. I don't know how you say this in English. Our
Rotating. It rotates,
rotating
revolves.
around the
It revolves around it. Yeah. No, it's true. Everything is actually, if you think about it, it's always composed. It is for specifically in dance. It is nice to see it, but we see it also in architecture, right? Where if you use one material, that's a singular material, and but how the material is used is often in various ways, so that would be a composed use of that material. So if you look at those group of 10 dancers, at first I think, okay, those are 10 singular bodies, but every singular body has 10 different body parts, and we went from 10 singular bodies to, and the whole group is a composed group, but as a team, it's a singular team. You put two teams on the stage next to each other in a battle or something. You have two teams, then you say, hey, you have two singular teams, but each singular team has 10 singular dances, and each singular dance has 10 different body parts, and they can all move in these various ways as we told them. So that's going from macro into micro, and that can be almost endless if you think about it. Even if we think that we move exactly the same way, and you zoom in, you will see we won't. It looks like the same, and which is great on a macro level. That's sometimes how audience looks at us on a macro level. But this is where Ton and his scheme method becomes in, I think, uniquely and brilliantly. If you practice yourself on the smallest level to do all these things precise and with awareness, you create actually on a macro level also a different picture. If you just say, and then as example, this is definitely what I learned from you. If you say, and as an example, to all those 10 dancers, move your right arm up. That sounds like great in the beginning, like, but you will see if you film that we didn't say the time. We didn't say in what direction. We didn't say in what with what muscle toners. We didn't say what path they had to follow the things, and therefore we often say sometimes coaches we hear them say, "I said all 10 now," and then still it's not the same, right? And because we need to give more instruction and direction, what that means. Slow. No, it's still not. We hear that, Tom. Yeah, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yes. Or they, or they say, what more? And
More.
you thinking, what I must do more? What? What then?
Yeah.
My legs or my hips or
Yeah.
no, your arm or my what more? You don't know. Yeah, you have to be more specific with your
Very, very
information.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that looking at those movements, whether you work with a group of 10 dancers or with an one dancer only, to look at all these things first in a singular way and start to make a composition of that, right? That's where the word composed is coming from. That will give you at least a lot of awareness of the movement. Let's not talk about whether the movement is better or more beautiful or uglier. It gives you more insight of how a movement is built up. What are the component? What are the component of each singular element in the movement? To understand that, you can only do that by breaking it down first and then build it up and do it again.
I have
Yeah.
a quote about that one, Sean.
Yes. Yeah. Like to
You
hear it.
can build it, you can build it down till the smallest detail,
Hmm.
but all details together is the whole.
Yeah. All details together is always the whole. Whether you like the whole or not doesn't really matter. Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
I have another quote I make in 2012. We learn in dance thousands of movements, but we bring it back to one readable display.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think definitely in whether you liked it or not, but the dances you have created for yourself and for others, in my mind, if I would put a word for it, for my mind, I definitely don't think in beautiful, funny or things. My mind always comes to word readability. I can actually read what they do. Now you need to have a little bit of knowledge to read that. And actually, we just had two dancers in your room, and who said we had part of the education from you now. And the things that they said was this, Don. They said now when we look at dancers, we can actually see what's happening. They can read it better, right? It's almost like they code what they're doing. Right, it's like computer code. You can break it down all to the smallest part, singular, and then you build it up. It becomes a computer program, which is composed. This is your second strike. You're
The second
mute.
time, so
Yes,
the
second.
second time, yeah. So I will do only time. I have only one time moved over. Yes, you can actually. Yeah, I forgot what to say. What I wanted to say. This, yeah, the patterns what you do by yourself in your dance, or make it visible for yourself and the other dancers. If you can understand it in your brain what they are doing, and you could recognize these patterns, then you can break them down. It's exactly how Sean said that, and then you have then options, and from the options you can choose actually. But we will make an other podcast about that one, how you could choose from options. But still, if you have freedom to choose, but we create options, and to release yourself from your history, and to make your decision from your instinct, intuition, and character, DNA, the environment, and the culture what shaped you or formed you, to stay in gem methodology. This is the beauty of it, to come to the point what you want. Do you want a singular movement or a composed movement? And now I not understand totally the English in that word, because some people say no, Tom, it's not composed, it's compound.
Yeah, that's in what we call layman terms, Don, where people just use almost similar things as interchangeable, right? But
Hmm.
compound comes from that's actually when you add things up, right? That's it. The
Hmm.
word computing in the word compound, computing is doesn't mean anything else than adding up, right? So compound. So I understand why some people say compound, and it's not. I don't consider that immediately as wrong, but in Gem we had to pick a term, and we liked compose more because that's the word composition is in there,
Hmm.
which I think fits the dense terms better. It's not, they have a different meaning, could be used when we just talk about this. I don't think we would have misunderstood each other if I say singular and compound, but I think composed next to singular is also is a little bit a better term, arguably. But we had many of those questions, right? Is it extend or flex? Or is it extend and flex, or is it bend and flex? What's
Hmm.
better? So some of these terms are close. And then, Ton, I think you did a wonderful job in just finding these words. And then when I did most of the translation, when I was trying to find translation words, here was the remarkable thing. Sometimes there was not a good English word for it, for what Ton came up. And actually, we will soon come out with a new Dutch word that we had to find in Latin an English word for it. So this is coming. And I have it over the Dutch word bewegingsgat. Hè? And
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
John.
So we have that, but we did a whole podcast on the word form, which an English person typically would say shape, but that has actually a significant different meaning if you go deeper into it. And in the beginning, I said also to Tom, yeah, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. Yeah, maybe when we just talk about it, it could be the same thing, but it is so beautiful of him to be very consistent in the words it used. And we try to do that in each language so that we can also talk to each other. And that makes that if we work with our students or the students work among each other or we work as coaches together, right? We have literally the same language. We don't misunderstand each other anymore. That's what I think is beautiful. Yeah, I love the word, but that's personal because compose has the word composition in there. It has the word components in there, individual parts. And if you go to compound, there is no, see that you cannot break it down like I just did. So that's my
Hmm.
clarification. Hopefully it helps.
It's it's the same with forming. You form it into something,
Hmm.
and the word form comes from the Latin word forma, figura. And in Europe, many languages come from the Latin, and they use this too. Shape is a pure English word, plus that shape is two-dimensional in the architect world, and in form is three-dimensional. They use it. In the art world, they use it as a three-dimensional
Yeah.
thing. Quite interesting
Yeah.
to know and keep words together in the same language. So when we have forma, din, dynamica, expression, then you keep it in the same Latin words. And so there are many reasons to put it as form. But I can imagine if you, as a human being, used to say shape, you formed by the shape.
Yeah, of course, when we listen to people, we just translate it in our head, right? We not immediately say, oh, you should say form. It's a little bit for English speaking people. I have noticed that when I start to use form to them, it's a little bit alien. It's a little bit foreign for them. They have a
Yes.
difficulty. Some of my students actually say, You mean form, right? When you said shape, Jean. I said, yes, I mean form. Good for you. And so I hear that. I hear my students, maybe you have that too, Ton, with all these things they start to, but that's of course subjective. They say that. They start to say the words back to me and then say, oh, but that's muscle memory, Jean. That we
Yeah,
hear all these words
word
back.
memory, word
Yeah.
memory, muscle
Yeah,
memory, word memory.
word memory. I love it. I love how then the students reflect back to you. Sometimes we do it on purpose to see if they pay attention. But yeah, the word singular and composed in this case is helps us to almost deconstruct what movement, and then if you can build it up from a singular point of view, it would not be different than when you build a house, right? You cannot just take all the stones and put them together and then all the cement and put it all together and then it becomes a wall. No, you literally have to take stone by stone with a little bit of layer of cement in between it to compose the wall. And when you see it finished, you think, oh, that's all bricks and cement. But there would no person who would build a wall would just say, put the put first the stone and then we put all the cement. It won't never be a wall. You have to be conscious about how you compose it. You want to make an angle of it, you have to change the direction of the how you lay the brick. You need to have an action, a rotating action in this case, to make an angle in the wall. You can see it once you play with these things. Only with these few terms, you see it everywhere. It's fascinating how that works. Whether we talk about building a wall, whether we talk about movement, whether we talk about art, whether we even talk about writing a book, it's fascinating. Hey, third time, Don. This is number three.
Third time. Sean, this summer you were in Barcelona
I was in
in
Barcelona.
this famous church.
Yeah,
Can
cathedral.
you
Yes.
explain me? Yes, can you explain me what you saw there?
Yeah, and that's the Sagrada Familia. That's a famous building from. That's it's not designed, by the way, by Gaudi. Some people think that it's designed by Gaudi. Gaudi at some point in time took over. Gaudi was one of the people, architects that was working in it, and the original architect could not finish it for reasons that I don't go into, and they asked Gaudi to step up, and Gaudi started to design it completely in a different way, but he definitely had this idea of macro, micro already in his head. He wanted you to see a lot of interesting thing on a micro level, but he also wanted to see this immense cathedral on a macro level. And Gaudi already passed away, and they're still building according to his plan. It should be finished in two because then it's 100 years ago that Gaudi actually passed away. That's how long that's ago. It's an amazing thing. Gaudi used a lot of interesting architects, and he hired specialists for every detail. Right, and if you look at it from a distance, you cannot almost see it, but the left side and the right side are completely different. Completely. It's, yeah, whether you think it's beautiful or not, put that away. But you can definitely see it's a fascinating, interesting building, and where you can zoom into the smallest detail. And the material he uses also, it's all type of material from everywhere. You look at colors, not one type of color. The color actually changes as the sun changes. He even designed that. How crazy is that? You see a lot of your colors that we talked about in the last podcast back, yellow, blue, and red. That's coming back. It's Sagrada Familia. Yeah, I hope I say it correctly.
Yes,
Not a
and
Spanish
with
speaker.
Singular and Compose, Sean, what happened there in this
Yeah, so
cathedral?
singular. You could see it's a singular cathedral, but it's composed out of different sections. That's where singular and compose come in. So in the material that he used, but also in the symbolics that he used. It's of course a singular it's a Christian church. Is that singular? But the symbolics that he used were all composed. They're all different. So almost no matter what perspective you take from life, and you look at that cathedral, and you can find a singular from it, and you can find the composed from it. That Tom is fascinating. Not sure if that's what you meant me to answer, but that's how I answered it.
Actually,
Oh,
also from the color, Sean,
from the
how they bring it back to the color,
yep.
start in one color and then bring more colors into that one color,
Yeah, the
to that singular
yellow.
color.
Yeah, that's it's so fascinating that he asks someone who is a specialist in stained glass. So Gaudi had already the concept in his head, but when the sun goes through those things, at some moment you see these singular colors, yellow, blue, and red. But when the sun start to move, the yellow and the red becomes together and becomes more orange. So at some point in time you come in the church and it feels more orange. So it becomes a composed color, right? Yellow and red becomes composed in an orange color. It's, I tell you, it's fascinating how much you can see with the book of gem in your hand. As strange as it is, I have a book of dance in my hand, and I can look at a cathedral designed by Gaudi over 200 years ago now, I guess, if I'm correctly in my history, maybe 150 years ago, and I can actually see. I look at it differently, not see more, but I look at it differently because I learned more about dance. Now, how crazy is that? That's, I thought, was fascinating. Like, it blew my mind.
Yes.
I could use gem in the cathedral.
Yes, and I inspired also through art with singular and composed,
Yeah,
Sean, how I discovered it. It
yeah,
was I was I did research for the architect world,
I know.
for the painter world, the photography and the design world. And actually, I thought by myself, they didn't speak about it singular or composed,
Oh, they
but
didn't.
no, they didn't. At one moment, I thought, okay, we have in the architect world, we have stone, we have iron, we have wood, um, we have glass, and we can also merge that together. And then suddenly I get a light in my brain. Oh, these are all singular components. And this brought me to the idea, they didn't mention it, but if you compose them together, you get something unique. And if you get them from different materials, you get compose something different. But if you only use one material, only wood, then still you can make different forms in it, but still the material is wood. And that was interesting. That's
Yeah,
how I find it.
yeah,
It came one day to me. What I found in the art world is symmetry, asymmetry, and geometry and organic. This is what I find and also use for dance. But the singular and composed, that's the beautiful. I didn't see that at that moment as a singular and composed
nice.
because I didn't understand it
Yeah,
yet.
very nice. Yeah, and Gaudi used that a lot. That singular and composed from a material point of view. He even almost gave room for material that at his time was actually not much used, like concrete, right? And so you see the last part of the building has concrete components in there, but is symmetrical and asymmetrical. Oh, that's so fascinated how he used it. From a distance, it looks symmetrical, and then you come closer, it's all asymmetrical. And then you look at organic and geometric. He used that on purpose, where parts are very. Gaudi has a lot of more organic type of forms, right? A lot of, but if you then look at another way, pure, you only sometimes you just turn, and suddenly it has a geometrical shape. It's, I can tell you, with if we would do our Gem conference in Berlin, that building alone is that clarifies almost everything. It's I thought it was fascinating. He used so much mathematic, which is very often geometrical, but he used that to create organic forms.
Yes, we can, when we go back to singular and composed, we
Hmm.
can see it as a singular body part, a singular direction, a singular action,
Yep.
a singular use of how you use the time or the duration or the tempo. And if you put, say, you make a pirouette, it's composed, but built up by composed actions. Action is actually a dynamic change also from bending, stretching, rotating.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make a pirouette, say you travel through a traveling pirouette or turns through the room. I could use a different word because I didn't want to use pirouette actually, but turns, but I didn't get the word in my brain for the English.
Yeah.
So if you make traveling turns through space, actually your feet doing, your head is doing ta, and your body is doing. So actually you get three singular different dynamic actions in one period. So actually you use other, so the period is actually singular if you make one period, but if you only do periods, they have several more actions in it composed, and you have to decrease it, or how you said, to build it
Decrease it.
down.
Yeah. Decrease.
Yes,
Yeah.
to yeah, to come to the smallest point, and this is quite interesting. And also, you see it in art when we look to Mondriaan. We spoke in our Dutch podcast about it. The squares and the colors he used. Sean can tell you something more about him.
Was Mondriaan was one of the, it's one of the Dutch artists, a little bit more contemporary, we would say. And we used that also, used a lot of Bauhaus principles, which we will not explain now, but just to be complete. And Mondrian used very singular geometrical shapes in his, that's one, so from a shape point of view, not form, because it's two-dimensional that he used, so in this case that's correct. And he used singular colors, so he used primarily a yellow, a red, blue, and sometimes green, but he also used black as mostly to use as the edges or the cadres around the colors. So he used his compositions. That's strange to say that, but his compositions are built out of singular elements. But he also wanted to make it visible that it's built out of singular elements. Mondrian, love it.
Also, all squares, when I remember, Sean,
What?
and one of the squares, the
Yeah,
most
squares.
of
Yeah, the
his art.
geometrical shapes were all squares. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so they were rectangles, and so they were not. So in mathematics, we see square is just always when the sides are all equal, right? But he used more rectangles where you know you
Yes,
have a little bit
and
different width and length. Yeah,
Sean said it shape, and that's correct because he is a painter and put it two-dimensional on the, how you say, not
canvas
on the
on the canvas. Yeah,
on the canvas. Yes, I was searching for that word, Sean. And if we go to Rietveld, that's also one fantastic artist, also influenced by Bauhaus, and he used also the colors yellow, red, blue, and black. And of course, his houses, because he built also one house for himself, and a very famous chair he did. And of course, he works also with these elements, wood and singular colors. So the primary colors, we could also use that because black is not a primary color, that's yellow, red, and blue. But the combinations of these three colors gets black. And we spoke about these colors in the jam already in our podcast, The Jam. That will be our first podcast on the second season, Sean.
yes,
Correct?
that is correct. That is correct. Yeah. Yeah. The themes that we talk about, they often, connect. Like singular now comes back to other sides. That's right, Tom. We're
Yes.
getting close to the end of this episode. Was there anything you wanted to add, Tom? in
I'm
our.
great that we could do this point in our podcast because it's a really great point of value to understand this point or to be aware of that point, how you could use that. But how we said it already, or what we said, is the most, and this we are assuming not realizing that you can break down everything in a singular part and use this in your choreography or even in your technique training, that you use it for your technically skills with the three action bending, stretching, rotating, and build that down to one singular action. And then it's not only what we use, but also how we use it in
Mhm.
which space, time. Mhm. Yeah, that's the one. The last one, I want to repeat my quote. We learn thousands of dance movements, but can we bring it back to one readable display?
Yeah.
That's the magic in my
I
case.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I love it. That was our episode about singular and composed. I hope it made a lot of sense for you. I have two advices, that you can follow. You don't have to. One is definitely listen to it again because Tom and I often brainstorm in a very wild way and bring in a lot of things to do that. Secondly, is really read about it. A good book to read about is of course The Gem. But if you from now on, look around you and you pick up a book of art or architecture, you will actually find it. Might be used in a slightly different way, but you will find it. You will find singular and composed. Yeah.
I forgot something to say,
Mm-hmm.
Sean, and we said it in
Mm-hmm.
our Dutch podcast. We have our alphabet, and we learn the letters A, B, C, D, etc. That's our singular characters. But when we bring them together, composed, we get a word. And when we singular words compose together, we get a sentence.
Yeah.
And when we put all sentences together, we get a story. And actually, you can look to dance in the same way, actually.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, of course. In language, the singular components are on the micro level are definitely letters, and you can make words of them. And from singular words, you can make sentences, and from singular sentences, you can make paragraphs. And from singular paragraphs, you can create a whole book. So you can see it. Yeah, like you said, Tom. I think that's a great example of the word of
Yes,
letters.
yes. And singular, they are mostly, I assume, calmer and more peaceful and more recognizable. And it gets more static. And if you compose only move, sometimes it gets not readable. And it's also it's multiplex because if you compose, you use many elements and it gets really not complex, even multiplex. That's the last thing what I wanted to say. And yes, I have also to go, Sean. And yes, you can make a nice ending to our podcast.
Yes, so you see it. If I give Ton the opening to tell more, there's always more to tell. But we
Yes,
have to end this
always.
podcast about singular and composed and how we use that in movements, but we have seen it also in other things. With that, we're going to say goodbye. But of course, we also are going to tell you where you can find us, which is always on our website, Spotify, Dance Jams, and or on Apple Dance Dance Dash Gems. That was funny. There was a Dutch word slipping through my English. On YouTube we are at Ton Greten /podcast. On our website we are at www.gem.dance.podcast and /podcast. And last but not least, we have a Facebook group. It's called group the Dance Jams. And with that, Tom, we came to the end of our episode, and I start the music,
Thank
and
you,
I'll
Sean.
say to you, bye bye.
Bye bye. Goodbye. Till next time.
Till next time.